If you're actively seeking ways to build your mental toughness, navigate life transitions with grace, or simply find inspiration to keep moving forward, then you're in the right place. Welcome to the Art of Beautiful Thinking podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Art of Beautiful Thinking. Today we're going to take a bit of a deeper dive into anxiety, actually, because everybody is talking about anxiety. It's very topical. It's something that is incredibly common. Last time we spoke about exercise, and these are the kind of tools that we use to overcome adversity. But we wanted to focus a little bit on anxiety because that is the monster that sits in the back of our head and that slowly and quietly undermines your confidence and chews away at what you're doing. It nibbles away at you. So Yvette and I wanted to share how we've managed to learn to, because you can't always beat anxiety, but you can learn to manage it. Over to you, Yvette.
Yeah. So I have had anxiety on and off as an adult, not so much as a child or as a teenager. I mean, obviously I had anxious situations where certain events would occur that would make me feel a bit anxious. And, if you're looking at a typical thing that can make people feel a little bit anxious is getting up there and speaking in front of an audience or in front of a classroom or things like that. And that gets you all worked up a little bit and you can get a little bit anxious. And I remember when that used to happen to me, someone said to me, "Oh, are you okay?" And I went, "Oh, I've got butterflies in my stomach and they're just, and I'm just feeling really nervous." And they said to me, "Just get the butterflies to fly in formation and you'll be fine." And it was like, I love that.
That is
That's
actually
perfect.
really cool.
What a saying. And so whenever now I get a little bit, I can feel nerves happening. That's exactly what I visualize as the butterflies flying. It's like butterflies are a good thing. They're just telling me to fly in formation, and that's exactly what I'm going to do.
That's awesome.
So, quite powerful. So, and then when I did start to suffer from anxiety was after really the health crisis that I had with the cancer. And one of the first things that I was given when I was going through that, there was a lady that I happened to be working with at the time who suffered from depression. She had a book called Stop Thinking and Start Living. I think it was something along those lines. It was a very small book. Wasn't thick, but literally it was, they're only thoughts,
Yes.
and you can change your thought. And when I kind of went, oh,
yeah,
and that was like my aha moment where I went, oh my God, I can change my thoughts. I don't have to become a victim of my own mind.
Your power back. Yeah. Absolutely.
And they're just stories that we tell ourselves, and we can stop playing that story and rewrite a new story.
Which sounds very simple.
It does, but it's not. It's a lot harder. But just having that realization that I could stop that pattern, as you said, empowered me. And then I started to just observe how I was talking to myself.
Yes, and that's the key.
And how I would react to a certain, like if I was talking to myself negatively, during the thing and working myself up, how that was, where was the trigger? What was causing that? What was the thought pattern that kept coming up all the time? That really wasn't benefiting me, because if my body is getting worked up and I'm getting worked up and I'm about to, turn myself into having an anxiety attack, that means that thought pattern is really, really not good for me.
Really powerful and really in a negative way. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And that's the hardest part, isn't it? Getting from, so anxiety appears in our heads and gives our body a feeling that, it sparks our central nervous system. It takes us out of the relaxed green zone into the red zone. And so our whole body goes on alert, and it makes us feel as though there is a threat. And that's why we're in a panic. And actually, it was a very well-developed warning system way back when, we were, not living in a technological world, and there were quite tangible risks out there to us all the time. Is a bear going to come and eat you, or, that kind of stuff? That was really what our brain was designed to do. But nowadays, it can get triggered and go into overdrive and just never turn off.
Never stop. Yeah.
And that's when you've got anxiety.
There's nothing wrong with having nerves and getting nervous. Yeah. It's quite natural. There's nothing wrong with that. And we all have, the little monkey chatter going on. We all have that. It just depends how loud the voice is.
That's right.
Some people have very, very loud voices because they haven't learned to actually quieten it. And others, like with me, I've been working on this for a very, very long time, over 25 years. And it's it's a constant, it's not a constant battle, because it's definitely not a battle. It may have felt like that initially, but now that voice is so much quieter, and I
Same.
can,
Yep.
when it pops up, I can actually calm it down quite quickly.
Mm.
As in the past, it would just override me,
Absolutely. Yeah.
and
And go into a
yeah,
spiral that you just can't
correct.
control. And that's when you go from, I'm feeling a bit anxious, to, oh no, I'm having all these terrible thoughts, to, oh, what if? And then bang, you're in a panic attack.
And exactly,
Yep.
when you're talking about the what ifs, it's like, but what if
Yep.
this and what if that? So
Yep.
again, you're creating these stories
Yep.
that haven't even happened. So
That's right.
you are, making something up and getting yourself worked up over something that has not even happened yet.
But
And that
the signals from your brain
doesn't
tell
know the
your
difference.
body,
Yep,
that's right, your body doesn't know the difference
yep,
between terrible, terrifying thoughts, which are, to be perfectly honest with you, when we break it down, normally irrational thoughts. We
yes,
call it, you can call it stinking thinking. It's known as, there's 10 habits of stinking thinking.
yep, yep.
And I read a really fantastic book when I first started dealing with anxiety a long, long time ago, by Dr. David Burns, who called it, who said, is sort of one of the fathers of cognitive behavioral therapy, because that's where this sort of comes back to, and that is, your thoughts control your emotions.
They do.
If you're sitting there thinking, in the middle of a lion's den, thinking, oh, it's not too bad, they haven't noticed me, I'll probably get out of here, I'll probably be okay, you might be a bit fearful, but you're not going to spiral into a panic attack. You're going to
Mm,
keep your brain intact. You're going to, use your mind to get you out of there. If you're going swimming and thinking, oh my god, there's going to be sharks and they're going to take my leg off, it's a totally different feeling, isn't it? So the cognitive behavioral therapy, I suppose, which is really commonly used to deal with anxiety, is all about your thoughts create your emotions, and those emotions create your body's response. And then
yeah,
you get locked in a spiral of scary negative thoughts. Oh my god, my body feels funny. So your brain's telling your body to feel funny. My body feels funny, so it must be true. And around we
and
go.
around and around. Exactly right.
One of those circuit breakers, as we said before, is to exercise.
Mm.
That's one of the, but it's hard to do when you're anxious. It's very hard to do. So if you're gonna, and the other hard thing about anxiety is, most people don't actually live in a space where they can hear their own thoughts, or they've ever stopped to listen and slow their thoughts down enough that they can hear what their brain is saying to them.
Yeah, because we're usually on autopilot. We're not. We haven't slowed down to observe. And that's why it's really important to become calm and centered, because when you become calm and centered, that's when you can make really good decisions. When you're
Yes.
in a spiral
Yep.
and your mind's going all over the place, you can't make any decent decisions. And if you're in
No,
that place all the time,
you're
the
just going
decisions
from,
you're making for your
yeah.
life, they're not going to be great. They're not going to be the best decisions.
No,
So,
they're going to, yeah, that's exactly right.
yeah,
They're going to be just going from beating out bushfire to beating out bushfire. And
correct.
it's not, there's no long, you can't do a long-term strategy
No,
if you're
not at
totally
all.
stuck in anxiety all the time.
Not at all.
Yeah.
And so, again, one of the other things that I used to use a lot was meditation as well. So I found meditation works quite well for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's all different types of meditation out there these days. You don't necessarily have to sit in the lotus position and be a Buddhist monk, and or go isolate yourself in a cave somewhere. There's so many different forms of meditation. You can do a deep breathing one where all of a sudden you focus on your breath. Because if we think of when you're about to have an anxiety attack, or you start to
Yeah.
get slightly depressed or whatever, your breathing changes. Yeah.
It becomes much
And
faster and much
it
shallower.
becomes a lot faster. Your heart rate
Yeah.
increases. There's all these things that
Yeah.
happen. And so the thing is you want to slow that down. And the best way you can slow that down is to then take your focus on your breath and start to do a kind of like a breathing meditation. And it doesn't have to go on
Mm.
forever. You can do this for several minutes, where you breathe in for a count of 4, hold for a count of 4, and then release for a count of 4. There's another one where you breathe in for a count of 7, hold for a count of 4, and release for a count of 7. So there's all different things. Or just becoming conscious of your breath and taking a deep breath in and feeling that breath going into your stomach, rather than just in your lungs, feeling going into your stomach, and then releasing that slowly, and imagining that when you're releasing it, they're actually releasing all the nerves and all
The
the
nerves.
unhealthy
Yeah.
thoughts with it. research. So
Yes,
there's
you had a very spiritual kind of reaction. Like that's one thing that's always been very different between you and I. On we've been through very similar things, but we handle it very differently. So
very differently, two different angles.
yours, yeah, two very different angles. So yours has always been very take that journey inside, look at the spiritual aspect of things, and really, that's where you've worked from. Whereas I've always found that very terrifying many years ago and too hard. So I've done when I've been anxious, tried to meditate, and it's given me a full blown panic attack.
Yeah, and that's the thing. You
Horrendous.
don't necessarily have to go into a full meditation. As I said, it's just breathing. So that breathing will just calm you straight away. It just centers you straight away.
Yep.
There's something in Aikido or in any actually of the Japanese martial arts. It's actually a Japanese thing. It's called the hara. So you've heard of the hara. So the hara is it's meant to be about that's where your center is within your body.
Yeah.
And usually it's just below the belly button, down in the pelvis area, just about there. And when you put your focus on that area, it's like there's a inner peace there. And it's, because it's always, no matter how much anxiety you've got going on or how much panic you've got going on, there's a part of your body that is always centered at peace.
That's interesting because I've used that for like centering myself to plant myself, when you do the oak tree type exercises that no one can push you over. Now I've done that, but not the contacting in the peace thing. Mine's all been very cerebral, mastering the mess in my mind because my mind has been very messy at times. Yeah.
So what I find is if you put your focus there, like you just stop, stand, put your hands on that part of your body and put your focus there, it automatically calms you.
That's really interesting. I'm going to give that one a go. Yeah.
It's a really powerful thing. And so the hara, as I said, in Japanese, it's your center. It's where your center is. And it's also where the inner peace, like deep inner peace is.
Yeah.
So it automatically centers you and brings peace to the body. So you'll find, and to the mind. So if you need to stop any time throughout the day, it doesn't take much to just stop and just go, okay, put my hands there and I'm just going to focus on the area for a second. You can do that anywhere. And so that's just another trick that I use, and it works. It works quite well for me. And if you then incorporate that with the deep breathing, like breathing into that area, and then feeling that release coming out, again, it just calms you straight away.
Oh, hello, Cat. And the reason that I've got Shmiel joining me today. Hello, Shmiel.
Hello.
She was like, oh my God, who's that cat in there?
You're gorgeous.
So the reason that calms your central nervous system down is it sends a message to your central nervous system saying our breathing has stabilized, the threat has passed.
Exactly.
So that's a really tangible technique that you can use if you're really stressing out. Yep.
Exactly. It's a really, really good one. So, that's another trick to use.
Yep.
And then obviously another one for me that I did get into was mirror work. And the thing with the mirror work, you don't do it whilst you're having an anxiety attack because you just won't.
No, that would not be, no. You
don't do that during that period. But you do it as a preventative measure. So every day do a little bit of mirror work. And the mirror work is looking at yourself and, repeating, like Louise Hayes has a whole book thing on it. You can create up your own, even if you do a little bit of research online. In fact, if you go to our website, we have a free mirror work tool sheet that you can use.
Good.
And it's a 30-day.
That's actually awesome.
It's actually based on the Louise Hayes one. But yeah, you just looking at yourself in the mirror, saying your name and saying something positive about yourself. Or you can just, there's a psychologist, and I think she's also a professional coach. And one of the things that she says to her clients is usually whenever people suffer from any form of anxiety, it comes back to a core belief of you not being enough.
Yeah.
And it's about not being good enough, not being worthy enough. You're just not enough. And so if you can look at yourself in the mirror and just repeat your name and just look at your eyes and say, I am enough, I am enough, I am enough. And you can do it whilst you're brushing your teeth or whatever, because you don't have to say it out loud. It's just looking at yourself, making the eye contact and saying that. You will find that if you do that every day for 30 days for a couple of minutes, you will find a complete change. It'll be difficult at first when you start doing it. It's funny, I think I've said this to you before, it's really easy for us to look at ourselves in the mirror when we're putting on makeup or doing our hair. But we're not really having a conversation with ourselves. We're just doing
We're just
whatever.
detached, aren't we? We're just using it
Yeah,
as a tool.
but if you're able to stop, take presence, look at yourself, notice who you are, and direct eye contact, and then have that small, I am enough,
Mm.
then it has after 30 days, you'll notice that there is a change. And
Mm.
that helps to start building a really good relationship with you.
Yeah,
know?
because I
It
guess
just,
you're talking directly to your subconscious, really, aren't you, in a way? You're
yeah,
speaking
yeah,
directly to yourself and telling yourself the things that you need to hear. And if you can't believe yourself, who can you believe?
exactly right. Exactly right. And that's, usually that's what it comes down to. So there's a lack of trust happening when you have an anxiety thing,
Yeah,
and that
right.
lack of trust is within you.
Yeah, there is a lot of that. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And
yeah.
so we may project it and say, oh no, it's because I don't trust things externally, but it ultimately comes back to your lacking trust within yourself. So, and it's a worthy thing.
Yeah, and I think and that's really important because I mean you've told me some new techniques today, and I originally started my anxiety journey seeing a psychologist. So I went and saw them and said, there's something wrong with me. I don't know what's going on. And they diagnosed me with anxiety disorder. And they said a lot of it came from when I was a child. Because,
Uh-huh.
when I was young,
Yep.
the adults around me were not reliable
Yep.
at all. There was no stability. There wasn't any reliability. I would be afraid a lot of the time. And no one really, everyone was sort of too caught up in their own stuff to be able to help me, because when adults are in crisis and chaos a lot, the children don't get cared for properly. Their needs don't get met. So again,
Yeah.
not trusting, not feeling enough, and not feeling valued as a child, because kind of we're sort of told their needs need to be put first, but it doesn't always happen. Anyway,
Yeah. Yeah.
so for me, I could not go down the meditative internal pathway. That was too frightening for me. There was too much still going on. So I had to use my brain. I had to go with a very cerebral, very cognitive behavioral therapy approach that was given to me by a really great psychologist called Sarah Angel. Angel by name, angel by nature. She was just amazing. And she taught me, she taught me how to do lots of CBT. So she explained it to me. She said, so things called the underlying beliefs that you're talking about, the term for those in psychology is those are called schemas. And they're beliefs that we hold that we don't even know that we hold them.
Mm.
So a lot of the time, like you said earlier, we've never sat down and actually looked and listened to what our thought patterns are, or asked ourselves the questions, why do you think that way? Why
Mm.
have you got those rules for this situation? So stinking thinking, she introduced me to the work of Dr. David Burns with the 10 habits of stinking thinking and mood logs, and that was amazing for me. And he would, for example, talk about black and white thinking. So, or all or nothing thinking, or mind reading. So, for example, mind reading might be you go into a social situation, you're already feeling anxious. And I see this a lot in young people today. You're worried because you feel like you might be not as skinny as you want, or your lipstick's not the right shade, or your hair doesn't look right, or whatever, because all of this pressure now is brought to bear, I think, worse than we had it on teens, because
Yeah,
they're all so
totally.
connected.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's also
Yeah.
narcissistic. It's all about how you look and how you're showing up, and who's got the most expensive clothes. I mean, it's always been a bit that way, but it's on steroids now with
Oh,
social
yeah.
media. So I think that creates a lot more social anxiety in kids today. So say, for example, you're going in there and you're already thinking to yourself, I'm not good enough. I'm not up there. I'm not doing the right things. You may end up saying, I actually have social anxiety and I really struggle in these kinds of settings, because you're mind reading. You're saying, I'm going to go in there and they're going to think this and they're going to think that. And they're going to go, oh, look
Yeah.
at her
So you're
dress.
preempting. You're preempting a
Preempting and
situation
mind reading
and it hasn't even occurred.
hasn't
Yeah.
even occurred. It's a completely irrational thought
Mm.
process
Mm.
to say that person looked at me funny. Maybe, oh, they must think that my hair looks like shit, or they think I'm an idiot. When in actual fact, that person's probably having a moment there where they may have tried to talk to someone who blanked them, or they're thinking about their own shit that's going on.
Yeah, they're going through the same thought pattern that you are. You just don't know it. Yeah.
Absolutely. So,
Yeah.
9 times out of 10, we all, in social situations, imagine people are noticing us a whole lot more than they are. People
Yeah.
aren't. They're
And
only
that's also,
noticing their
it's
own
also
stuff.
because we're looking for external validation. And the
Exactly.
reason why we're looking for external validation is because we don't approve of ourselves.
Yep. Yep.
And so we're looking for it externally. But when you start to approve of you, and value you, you then don't need to look for it externally.
Give a shit. You don't
And
give a shit.
that's why, you know, building that relationship with yourself becomes so important, because all of a sudden those things that used to make you anxious no longer do. Because you've built a very trusting, loving relationship with yourself. And
That's right.
You know,
And
it's
you've
a very
overcome
different
those.
thing.
You've identified, and I think the mood log that I mentioned was brilliant because it helped me to go from, I had to externalize my thought process and put that down on a piece of paper. So I, you know, I and everyone has a little bit of dysfunction, right? So we're all a bit quirky, we're all a bit weird.
No one's perfect.
That's it. We all do, and all of us always will have something to some extent. It's just, it becomes a dysfunction when it starts to affect your capacity to live your life.
Yes.
So if you're feeling a bit anxious about things, but you're okay, you can still go out and enjoy your life and do things. You might get a bit of social anxiety. We'll stick with that because it's easy. But you're still able to go out and meet people and do the things that you want to do. That's okay. If you get social anxiety to the point where you think you spend, you know, 2 hours trying to pick an outfit and do your hair, and at the end of it, you just go, oh, fuck, I'm not going. I can't stand myself. Curl up in a ball and spend the night on the couch eating ice cream because you hate yourself. That is a real problem.
Yeah. And that goes again back to, if we look at it, it's a relationship with self. Yeah.
That's right.
And so if you look at any, when we look at anxiety, even when we talk about the I'm not enough, I'm not good enough, the interesting thing is that is the core fundamental negative belief to all beliefs, negative beliefs. So when you have the, you know, I'm too fat, I'm too skinny, I'm, you know, I don't have enough money, I'm not smart enough, I'm not this, I'm not that, insecurities, all that type of stuff, it all actually stems from this one belief, which is I'm not enough.
I guess so. And that comes out in all different ways, though, doesn't it?
It
comes
shines out in
so many different ways. Yeah.
And it usually occurs from a time when you were a child where some event happened and you made a decision as a child in that event that you weren't enough. And that it could have been a small event, it could have been a big event, but you made a decision then that you weren't enough. And that decision is now playing out as an adult in all these different areas of your life. And it's
I don't know, like, I mean, I understand where you're coming from, but I would challenge you on that, because I would also, whilst I agree that that is present, I think that too also, you know, people can go through events that are terrifying, like we did with, you know, your cancer and my baby loss. And that triggered huge amounts of anxiety in me. Certainly from when I was a child, there were issues anyway.
Yeah.
That was more really very clearly, when I could slow my thoughts down. And that was the hardest part, being able to stop. What are my thoughts? Why am I in a panic? And that's terrifying to do at first, but then you get good at it and you go, okay, I can hear. All right, so I ate something, it upset my stomach. My liver's going to fail again.
Yeah,
I'm going to go into kidney failure. I'm going back to hospital.
But that's not,
you know what I mean?
what that was PTSD, as opposed to when we're talking about not being enough. So when you're talking about the I'm not enough one, it does come from a belief.
Yeah.
However, any of those situations will bring up your insecurities. They'll bring up all your insecurities.
Yeah.
So
I think there's a lot of messaging these days as well, though, that will, even if you haven't had a traumatic event, I think a lot of messaging that there is available on the internet, on social media, I think people are incredibly irresponsible and they send that message out that people are not good enough. You've got to be perfect at this. You've got to be perfect at that.
And you don't. And that's one thing. I mean, even though I absolutely love personal growth, I think personal growth is amazing. You know, the knowledge industry is a phenomenal industry, and even self-help to a point. However, you've got to be mindful of the people that are giving you that information. You know, what is their knowledge in it? How long have they been on that path for? Because if they're trying to tell you there's something wrong with you, then you don't want that, because there's nothing wrong with you. There is absolutely nothing wrong with you. All it is that you have just put your thoughts on the wrong track for a little bit of time. And it's about changing that thought pattern. But as an individual,
someone else's narrative,
there is absolutely nothing wrong with you. You're an amazing, unique individual, and you have the right to basically express yourself fully. And what you're doing is stopping yourself from doing that, which is why you feel like crap.
Yeah.
And you're holding yourself back. So it's it's really about that's why I keep saying it's about tapping into that relationship with yourself and understanding that you are enough, regardless of what has happened in the past, regardless of any of the events that happen, because that's something that we have a tendency of doing as humans, is externalizing and then getting our validation again from external events or situations, and then internalizing that and saying, oh, because this has happened, this is what I'm like. And it's like, no, that is not you. That's just a freaking event that has happened. And any events can happen anytime, any place. And
look,
they
I
pass.
agree that is the ultimate root of it all. But I think when you're in it, and
But when you're in it, you can't see it.
you cannot see that at all.
No.
And I think some of the tools that are really important to kind of dial down that anxiety, like you were saying, you're at that point now in your life where you go, oh, hello, anxiety, I recognize you. I know why you're here.
Yeah.
And no, shh.
Exactly. But I've done a lot of work.
You've done a lot of work.
And I continue to do work. I haven't gone, oh, okay, well, I've done all of that. Now I'll put it on the shelf and I'm fine forever. No. And I don't keep working at it because I think there's something wrong with me. I keep working at it because we are evolving beings. We are meant to evolve. We are meant to grow. We're not meant to stay the same. So, and I think that's part of where some of our anxiety can also come from, is that we feel that we're stuck.
Yeah, I think so. I think people can know that they're stuck and they know that they're feeling anxious, but they don't know how to take that first step. And it's always that first step that's the hardest. I assure anyone with anxiety who would be listening to this podcast, the absolute most difficult thing to do is to stop and go, okay, I'm going to listen to my thoughts, and then I'm going to challenge those irrational negative thoughts. And I'm going to say, hang on a second, I'm not a loser. Whatever it is in your mind that's going on. There actually is no such species as a loser. So
no, there's not.
I can't be a loser. I'm a human who is struggling a little bit at the moment. And instantly there's a much kinder tone that you treat yourself with. So as you were saying,
compassion. You have to be compassionate with yourself. You absolutely do.
And then once you start, I think, slowing your thoughts down, challenging those thoughts, like the mood log is a great way to do it, and identifying how is this stinking thinking. So you might be being perfectionistic, having ridiculously high expectations of yourself. And I think this is really common now in our society, where you put tons of pressure on yourself to be perfect in whatever way it is. Just no one can achieve it. It can look nice on highlight reels and things, but no one can achieve it. And then when you can say, oh, hang on, actually, I don't have to be that. I'm not being that. It's dumb. And then you might reduce your anxiety once you go through that process of doing that mood log. You reduce your anxiety by, you start off going, my anxiety is at 80%. I'm going to challenge, what are my negative, awful, unrealistic thoughts? I don't think they're unrealistic when I'm originally writing them. I'm just letting them flow out of my head. And then when I unpack that and go, I'm going to challenge those thoughts. They're irrational. And they are self kind of depreciating. They're awful, self-deprecating to the point of almost, running myself down. Exactly. I get to the end of that process and I might go, well, what does my anxiety rate as now? Oh, it's gone down to 20%. And then you come back an hour later and you read the dumb shit that you wrote about yourself. And you go,
exactly right. Another really good one is just gratitude. If you just, when you're feeling it coming on, you don't have to write it. You can write it if you want, but just to start to think straight away of some things that you're really grateful for right now in your life. And it could be anything from, I'm actually really happy for a good conversation I had, 5 minutes before, or someone smiled at me, or I'm cuddling my cat or my pet, and that type of thing. And so you can think of the things that you're grateful for, because that starts to change, brings in the dopamine levels. So it actually starts to change the emotion. Emotional,
the neurotransmitters and calms you,
and you start to focus on something else. Another thing that you can do is think of something that actually brings joy to you. So again, when something like, when you're going through it at the beginning, hard to do when you're in the midst of it, like if you've allowed it to come on, but you can still do it. You can still change, because it's changing the visual or the thought pattern.
Yeah, it is. It's changing that thought process.
If you have a little baby or, a pet, as I said, or something that brings you joy, and when you think of them, it puts a smile on your face, someone you love, a good friend, whatever, think of that situation. Or if it's, you've just come back from a really, really good holiday,
Yeah.
Think of that. Whatever's going to bring joy to you,
Bit of
and then that'll
distraction.
change you straight away as
Yeah,
well.
yeah. Changes
I
your
mean, that was
state.
one of the techniques that I was using when I was going through my cancer journey. Was I would think of something that brought me joy, so I wasn't always focusing on what was happening
Right.
with the cancer.
See, I couldn't do that. I couldn't do that. I was too overwhelmed with the fear of, possibly dying and, not knowing what was going to happen with my internal organs, and then the
But
loss of
funny, but you were
plant.
doing it. You were visualizing rebuilding your
It
liver and your
wasn't
kidneys.
joyous. There was no
But
joy.
you were still visualizing it.
I had to cut the emotion out of it to a great
Yeah.
extent and
Well,
just
but
do a
that's because
cerebral.
you were dealing,
Mm,
going, I just need
yep,
to get from here to here. And
yep,
that's the other thing as well when we talk about that is give yourself small goals. It doesn't have to be something massive. So if you're in
yeah,
the midst of it, like if you're
yeah,
actually in the midst of an anxiety attack and you're trying to pull yourself out of it, just go, okay, I'm just going to start thinking of this one thing
yep, yep.
in a positive light.
Well, I'll survive to the next
Yeah,
bit.
exactly, to the next, whatever it may
Yeah,
be.
that didn't bring me joy and it didn't make me grateful. Although I must say, by the second day, when they said, "Oh, you're mostly out of the woods," I started to feel grateful then. So gratitude's hugely important, but very, very difficult to rustle up when you're really, you're on the
When I was
plane.
a kid and going through, like, raised in a domestic violence, environment, and it was happening almost daily, when I'd go to bed, no one taught me this, I just did it myself. When I'd go to bed, I'd sit there thinking of all the things that I enjoyed about life.
Mm,
And
that
that
really
was as
got
a
you
kid,
through.
when I was really young. And I
Amazing.
remember that, like, I'd go to bed and I'd do a quick prayer because we were Catholics, so I'd do a quick prayer,
Mm.
and then I'd start thinking of that. Or I would actually, if you could go to the shadow side, I'd start going, there are other people out there who have got it far worse than I do. Stop feeling sorry for yourself.
Okay, that is a
Um,
big gratitude. That is a big gratitude move. I would lie
yeah,
there thinking, "Oh God, I wish. Why the hell is my mother staying with this piece of shit?"
yeah,
And
yeah.
then it wasn't until I went to university and understood why battered women
Why
stay
that
with these
happened.
men
Yeah,
and what
yeah,
is coercion and control. And then I was like, oh, now I understand.
yeah.
But
There
back
you go.
when you're,
Yeah,
when you're outside looking in and you've never experienced that, you don't have an understanding of why it is that way. But yeah,
yeah.
but I
So
always
that's what I'm
get,
saying. You can, even in the midst of the ugliness happening, you can still actually
find a
find something.
purpose, find a
Yeah,
pathway through, whatever that
yeah,
looks like, because it's different for everyone. But
it is
whatever your
totally.
path or your reason or your why or whatever that is, and that is, I suppose, how you find happiness. People say, "How can I be happy?" Well, it's your thing. You got to figure that out. It's in the small things that work for you. But
Exactly.
I mean, anxiety when I've worked with offenders, because in community corrections and in a prison setting, I used to love it when they'd say when they'd come in and sit down, and the other thing about having had anxiety and managed anxiety is you can spot it in someone within 2 seconds, right? Yeah. You can see that someone is really, really anxious. And then you know how to ask the questions and go, oh, let's talk further about this. And then the relief that they feel when you go, oh, okay, so I can see that you've got quite bad anxiety. Yep. And I always say anxiety, I think, in my opinion, my humble opinion, is the best mental health struggle to have because it is the most manageable and it's got so many tools out there. Like if you can get on top of anxiety, like you said before, it is all about mastering your own mind. And it's your mind
Yeah,
and you own it. So
yeah,
you can choose how to run it. Ultimately, you can choose what thoughts you
yeah.
have.
And I'm actually going to take that a step further. That's when you're talking about, you're mentioning about anxiety and how it is about mastering your own mind and changing the thoughts. And that goes for all aspects of your life.
Mm,
If you want to, like, succeed in a particular area, well, how do you do that? You build the
yeah.
skills, you get the knowledge, you do that type of stuff. But if you believe you can't do it, then you're not going to be able to do it because your belief says you can't do it. So you need to change your belief into going,
Yeah.
no, I can do it. And you do that by building the confidence and taking small actions and small steps to start moving forward in building that new knowledge and new skill. And it's exactly the same with anxiety, with overcoming it. If you want to work on it and overcome it, then yes, it is about changing becoming aware of your thought patterns, starting to change it, and also becoming aware of your self-sabotaging patterns as well.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
And becoming aware of them. So awareness is the first thing, because without awareness, how the hell do you know what
What's
you're
going
thinking?
on?
You're just in the, you're
Yeah.
just in it. So you've got to become aware first.
Yep.
And that's step one.
It is
So
step
that's
one.
step one is
Yep.
start being aware, and then
That's
once
a
you
big
start,
step. That's a big step
it
for a
is. And
lot of
once you
people.
start becoming aware, and you're finding yourself becoming aware more frequently, then you can start going, well, okay, I'm now going to change, start bringing in a new thought pattern to replace that one, or I'm going to start thinking of an affirmation, or I'm going to journal, or I'm going to do whatever. But you have to become aware first.
You do. And then you've also got to be willing to put in the work, because there is a bit of work. It is a bit confronting. Like the
That's very
journey of,
confronting.
the journey of mental health is hard yakka. Growth is hard. It's not easy. There's no silver bullet, but that's why it's good sometimes to get a coach or a psychologist or whomever it is that you
Someone to
feel
help.
comfortable with, because
Exactly
then
right.
you can scaffold off them and they can give you confidence when you're feeling particularly low. If you've got a good, wise friend, I've got a friend who has recovered from horrendous grooming and child abuse, and some days she just feels like she cannot cope, and she'll ring me and I'll go, oh, hang on a second. Remember how so far in your life you've managed to overcome everything? And we just reframe and we change, and she calms down, and then her capable self-belief kicks back in, and then she can start moving forward again in small ways. And over years, that you build on that. And again, that
and it
makes all
becomes
the difference.
easier and easier. That's the thing. It becomes easier and easier. But because if you don't do that, okay, if you don't decide to take that step forward and have a little bit of courage initially to go, I need to work on me, then you're going to continue having these crippling effects. And I would say to you, do you want a life where you are constantly having crippling effects, or would you like to master yourself and learn to overcome that and use the tools and the techniques that can
that
help
you've got
you
at your
with that,
disposal.
so you can actually better your life? And
Well,
again, it's not,
anxiety is an insidious bastard, isn't it? It's one of those things that's, people go, oh, anxiety, everyone's got anxiety. Okay, well, there's a lot of people that do have it. However, it's one of those things that undermines your whole life. It colors the view that you have on everything. It really, it's like it's like you've been gut punched and then just someone's got you down on the ground with their boot on your head.
Yeah.
That's what anxiety feels like. And it's so hard. And when you're in it, you think, oh my God, this is never going to end. This is never going to change.
The other interesting thing for women going through menopause, who have never had anxiety before in their entire life, and then all of a sudden they start getting anxiety because of the hormonal changes. What's coming up again is all of their insecurities, all of the things that they've had in their mind, but they've never allowed it to cripple them, is now actually crippling them.
It's a lot harder to because hormones affect your entire body.
They do.
So, when you're going through a biological change, you can, it's really important not to berate yourself. Like you said, all these things that we may not have dealt with in the past, they come back and they bite us, and they come back harder. So I'm doing exactly that at the moment. I'm going through menopause, and I went to my doctor and I said, holy shit, my anxiety's come back. And that's really weird, because I've slayed that dragon a long time ago. Why has it come back? And she said, oh, I think it's just hormonal. And I'm like, okay, I understand that biologically those changes are going on, and you are, at the end of the day, we are all prisoners of our biology to an extent. However, like you're saying, what are the problems and what are the anxious thoughts that are coming up? So when I'm anxious, I go to health anxiety. That's how it manifests in me. And that's because of the trauma that I went through when I lost Charlotte. So I start panicking about, what's that feeling in my body? What's that? And I'm like, oh, hang on, why am I doing that anxious thing? So again, the growth and the work and the exercise and the holistic approach needs to be observed. And that's the thing that we click all the boxes, don't we? We make sure we take care of our nutrition, you make sure you start exercising more, because again, if you're going through a biological change and then start doing the work, slowly unpacking, going, where's that belief coming from?
Exactly.
What is that? Why am I hanging on to that crap?
Yeah. And for me, it was the what came up during menopause anxiety attacks was the not good enough. Like I kept getting that coming up. I'm not enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not loved.
Because we change so much in menopause, like our skin changes, our hair changes, our body changes, and you do
body shape change, everything. It's like, woo, totally different.
I'm old. That's what I had. I had thoughts like that.
And then that's the thing. Then you're dealing with, oh, well, now I'm aging, and we're not meant to age. We're meant to constantly look young and beautiful and perfect. And then that brings up its own stuff, and you just kind of go, okay.
And men don't get any of this. They
No,
don't get
and
any.
you've got
You
to let
know
it
what?
go.
The more grey hairs that my husband gets in his beard and hair, the more I think,
No,
oh, you
yeah,
look good.
silver fox. Yeah.
Yeah, my silver fox,
You know, do
silver
you call
bear.
women silver foxes? No, we don't.
No,
What
they
do they
call
call
us.
an old woman? They call her an old hag. What do they call
Yeah,
an old man? A silver fox. I mean,
yeah,
come
it's
on.
ridiculous. It's ridiculous. In fact, I think we need to invent a message or some sort of awesome word for a silver-haired woman. Yeah, it's not fair.
No, it's not. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's totally ridiculous. So, you know, there's this two-side thing, and that plays out. So not only do you have your own stuff that's playing out, then there's the societal messages, and you, as I said, you look for validation in that, and it's really, that's why it's so important to build that relationship with self, because if you
Yes.
keep looking externally, you're
Yeah.
always going to come up short. Always.
Well, because you're never going to be able to meet society's
No,
expectations. I mean,
not
you
at all.
probably could if you could afford God knows how much plastic surgery and fake crap. But then again, I don't want to look like that.
Yeah.
I don't want to sit there going,
Yeah.
and having no wrinkles. And I
Uh,
just, it just
yeah.
wouldn't. I don't always think that is the answer anyway. I mean, look, fair play to people that want to do it. But I have met people that are talking to me going, hello, how
Yeah,
are
you
you?
can't, their face isn't moving. Yeah, it's very hard. And then, and that again is an insecurity playing out though. You know, I want to stay young. I want to stay youthful. I've got to be this because, you know, if I don't, I'm not worthy. And again, it goes back to I'm not enough. So
And
it's,
and
it's a
some
wicked cycle.
women are unlucky enough to have partners who also kind of put that pressure on them
Oh
too,
yeah.
or
Yeah.
find them less desirable as they
Yeah.
age.
As
But
they get
again, it
older.
comes back
Yeah.
to that relationship with yourself where you can
Yeah.
say, well, you know, this is what I've got. I thought you fell in love with me, not just my
My
visage.
physical appearance. Yeah.
Exactly.
Absolutely. So
Right.
yeah, there's so much there. And one of the other aspects when we were talking about if you can't do that reflection or that change of thought pattern whilst you're in, you know, the beginnings of an anxiety attack or during, obviously, when you're spiraling down really bad, is once it passes, sit
Yeah.
down and do some self-reflection
Yep.
and look at the thing of similar to what you're talking about with the mood book, but you're doing it
Yep.
afterwards and you're looking at
Yep.
it going, well, what were the thought patterns that were coming up?
Yeah. Because the thoughts will still be there. You'll still
Yeah,
be
they'll
able to
still be
remember
there.
that.
So looking at it going, what are the thought patterns that were coming up? What can I, you know, what empowering patterns can I bring in to replace that? You just need one or two. You don't need to bring in
Yep.
a whole heap, just one
Yep.
or two. What activities can you do every day to help you prevent yourself from having another anxiety attack? And that's another
Yeah.
thing. So what tools can you use to bring in, you know, do you want to read some books on how to cope with certain situations? Do you want to get into personal growth? Get a coach, as you were saying, or, you know, go see a psychologist or a counselor, whatever. It's to get some things that are going to help you prevent it from happening again in the future. And
And have hobbies as well.
yeah,
That's
have
the other thing.
hobbies.
People
As we
really
mentioned,
underestimate the
exercise works
power of that.
beautifully for anxiety. Having a good diet works beautifully for
Yep.
anxiety.
Because you're also allowed
Making
to
sure you've
distract.
got the right nutritional supplements, you know, all these
Yeah,
different
yeah.
things.
B vitamins are amazing for anxiety. You know, I mean, there's been a lot of data done on people with like methylation issues. If they don't have enough B vitamins, that was a massive one for me. If my B vitamins and my zinc drop away too low, I will start getting anxiety. Whereas if I get my folate levels back up again, I use sublingual B vitamins, which are already kind of partially, they're one step on so that the liver can deal with them more easily.
Yep.
Fantastic. It
Yep.
works so well for me. And you know, everyone is different. I have to cut my caffeine intake.
Yeah.
Caffeine
Well,
is a
I can't
I got
drink
anxiety.
caffeine at all,
Yeah,
because it actually makes me anxious.
yeah,
So
yeah,
I can't have it at all. So
yeah.
I avoid caffeine, and that goes for whether it's coffee, whether it's Coke, whether, you know, any guarana, any of those things. I have to actually avoid because it makes me extremely hyper, and
Yeah.
then I crash and burn, and in that crash and burn, I get depressed, and I get sort of very I almost feel like, you know, when you imagine those cartoons where you'd see a cat that's put its paw in a PowerPoint and it's all fuzzy. That's how I feel afterwards. It's like those, you know, it's
That's a good
just
one.
on edge, totally on edge.
My
So
God,
yeah,
it's horrendous. So, and the other thing is to remember as well is that anxiety can actually come on quite a lot worse at night,
it can.
interestingly,
Yeah,
because your brain is tired. You know, when you see dementia patients, they do something called sundowning, where they get worse of an evening. You're shattered. by the time, especially if you're on tenterhooks and feeling anxious all day, and just holding it together like that, you might get home and just go
Yeah.
and turn into that frazzled cat. That's
Yeah.
horrendous. So cut yourself a break. And then sometimes the other good thing to do is at night, when you know that that's going to happen, or you feel like that may happen, what are your circuit breakers? What are the things that you can do that will stop that anxiety? So get your little mood log out, read something, distract yourself with a movie that you love, or whatever it is that you can do. Because I found when my anxiety was really bad, I couldn't read books.
Yeah,
I
and
couldn't
sometimes
focus.
you can't focus on stuff, but you can watch something, but you can't focus on,
Yep.
the mental focus goes. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
whatever it is that
It's
works.
interesting how it plays out. And so going back to when you were saying, trauma as a child, etc. There was studies being done that children who have gone through forms of domestic violence, like a lot, they've got a higher percentage rate of actually having anxiety after they leave the home. So even though they may not experience it whilst they're in the situation, as adults, they have got a higher chance of actually developing anxiety.
Yes, absolutely.
And so it's funny how for me, I didn't have anxiety as a kid or a teenager. I got it as an adult. And the cancer probably triggered it even more so. So
Sure.
it's just, it's interesting.
Well, actually, I have worked for child safety. It's really interesting. They do a whole training section on cumulative stress.
Yeah.
And it becomes toxic for children, which is why they now focus on getting kids out of the home when they're in those domestic violence situations, because it's just constantly signaling to those children's amygdala that they're in danger all the time.
All the time.
So
all the
they
time.
can't, and this is how, domestic violence really affects kids, is because they're constantly unsure of how the home will go, the stability, the anxiety goes through the roof. Yeah, they've got this cumulative trauma, toxic stress that affects how they grow. It affects how their brain grows. It affects their capacity to concentrate at school. Yes. So it affects their learning, experiences and their interactions with peers. It affects every part of their life, and it underpins it all with this horrendous anxiety. And that's so common. And unfortunately, people don't always understand just how badly I've seen a lot of people it doesn't even dawn on them. They're like, oh, kids are resilient. We're just having an argument.
Well, see, and it's fascinating because they've done all this research on that now. Because of my age, when I went through that as a child, there wasn't any resources out there.
No.
The police never got involved in any domestic violence disputes ever. You never spoke about it. No. So you didn't even have an outlet to be able to go and speak to someone about it. You did not speak about it in public.
Absolutely
whatsoever.
not. Respect your mother and your father. Do not say anything negative about your parents, because they brought you into this world.
Exactly. You did not mention it. You just went there. You went to school. You came home. You knew on your way coming home, and that's when you would start to go, all right, start putting the shield up, start, putting the protective layer on, do whatever you need to do to get through the night.
That's right.
That's exactly how it is. And then the next day you wake up, you go, okay, I survived that one. All right, now leave again. And it was so much better when you weren't there. But whenever I was coming home, there was always this, okay. And the funny thing is, as an adult, and I would even say today, I can tolerate so much, like my tolerance level for things is extremely high.
Same.
That's good in some aspects, but also bad in others, because it means I can tolerate too much when I should have walked away.
Yeah, you've got to put your boundaries in really carefully when you
really carefully. And that's been an important aspect, is boundaries around that. But that's another conversation. So it's but that took a lot of learning.
Yeah, absolutely.
I need to set boundaries.
Yeah.
So if I look at my own personal growth path or journey as such, it's absolutely, like, for me, I'm not surprised at all that I took that path. I'm not surprised at all that I started to look at things spiritually and things like that, because I had nothing else for me to tap into. So
especially if you were raised as a Catholic,
to tap into something to help me. Yeah,
and you were raised as a Catholic, which obviously,
Yeah, but I didn't go to church that often or stuff like that. I didn't agree with it. Like, I did go to a Catholic school, funny enough, and every time we would have the priest that would come in to talk to us about, like doing Bible studies or whatever, I've questioned them too much, and they get frustrated with
Yeah,
me.
I know, it's so funny. I would do the same thing. It's like, hang on, that doesn't make any
Yeah, it's
sense.
like
No.
yeah.
Not that I'm having a go at people that have religion, because if they do,
No,
that's
not at all. I
great.
mean, each to their,
And
like, if it
we all need
works for
something
you,
spiritual.
go for it. You know, each to
Mm.
their own. And I don't begrudge religion or anything like that. What I begrudge about it is when you try to push it onto other people. It's more to do with if that brings you joy,
Go for it.
by all means go for it. You know,
Yep. Yep.
And so all I'm trying to do is through that story is to show I'm not surprised that that's what I did, and because I made a decision as well as a child that I did not want to have a life like my parents,
Yeah, me too.
then
Yeah.
that also put me on
That
a
wasn't for
very,
me.
I was very clear about what I didn't want in my life. So I've done everything to not
That
have
wasn't for me. Yeah, that wasn't for me. I think I went down the psychology uh, line because I was very untrusting of everything that was just too emotional or too intangible, or, and all that was just like that for me. It was too intangible. I don't want to deal with that spirit. So I shut the emotion down because I found too much emotion, too much chaos, too much drama just sucked the life out of me, and I didn't trust it. So what I liked about psychology was like, they were like, these are evidence-based practices that we have shown research for, and we're here to tell you in a completely non-emotional way that this is a health thing. So it's like going to your doctor. So I don't have an agenda. You don't
yeah,
need to trust me. I don't care if you trust me or not. These are the facts. And I was like,
yeah.
okay, good. I will allow my genius brain to work with this. But I didn't trust anything else. I wouldn't have trusted myself enough to go down a spiritual path at that time in my life.
And I think that's the thing is I did have a lot of trust in me because I being the youngest, my siblings were a bit older than me. So when they left home, I was at home by myself with the DB going on.
Yeah.
And so I had to learn to rely on me.
Yeah.
And I had to learn to rely on me at a very young age. So I think that so I'm extremely independent.
You are. And I am too. But I think
and I
you
think
have a different belief system around that from when you were young. You believed that you were capable and could get on with it. But see, I was always told how useless I was. And
I was told I was useless as
I
well, but I
internalized
chose
that.
not to believe it. I looked at it and went, no, I'm not
Okay.
going to
That's
believe
really
that.
interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
A crossroad. So both of
Yeah.
us dealt with that differently, and I couldn't stop it from internalizing, and you were able to do that.
Yeah, I just kind of went, I'm not going to take that belief. That's your belief. It's not my belief.
Yep. Yep.
And I knew that it was always said in to be hurtful, not truthful. Mind you, some of it I did take on. I may have. It's more about the and we're probably getting off topic a little bit here. It was more about the what's the word? Because I've got a little bit of that A-type personality. So when you say to me, "Don't do something," I go, "Screw you, I'm doing it." Yeah. So it's
Why we get along so well.
so when they used to, when my parents would say something to me that was quite, nasty or derogative, I would just go, "No, fuck off. I don't believe that because it's coming out of your mouth."
Yeah.
Even though it still affected me, it was still hurtful.
Yeah.
But I just kind of went, I'm choosing not to take that on board. But I know that my not good enough feeling came from that. It came from always being told that I wasn't enough.
Yep.
So, but it drove me, if anything.
Yeah, it did for me too. But I think it was in me, and I had the same thoughts. Like, fuck you, I'm going to do what I want. But I was still quite because I went from pillar to post a lot. I went to a stepmother that was living with my dad, who also found me really troublesome because my behavior was bad, because kids act out. So they reinforced that message. She reinforced that message. My dad reinforced that message. My nan, not so much, but all the main primary caregivers in my life would always struggle with me. And so I did internalize, okay, you're the problem. You're the one who's the common denominator around here. So you are a problem. And so I did internalize that. I think if I'd been home just with my mum and my dad or something, and if that had been the case, but I was scapegoated a lot as a child as well. And that was hard because I was scapegoated by my dad. I was scapegoated by my mum when she was in that really bad. And I forgive her because she was in a terrible position. So I internalized that scapegoating. My step brothers and sisters scapegoated me, and my nan didn't. But I was always the bad, painful kid that no one wanted. And I went back and forth between England and Australia by myself from the age of 9.
Bloody
and they
hell.
just chuffed me around, and I think that I internalized that. And so a lot of my anxiety when I got older came, and I think I actually had anxiety as a child, but no one picked up on it when I look back.
Yeah, I would say the same thing that I probably did as a child too, because when I talk about that coming home and then going, okay, I've got to do this, that's a form of, getting anxious about having to walk in the door.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
what are you going to, you don't know what you're going to face when you come in
No, no,
at any
no.
given moment. Um,
Terrifying. I
yeah,
mean, that was more when I was sort of in my teens. My mum was married to a very, very violent, um, alcoholic Vietnam War veteran who was just a fucking maniac. Like, he would drink a 6-pack of heavies in 40 minutes on the drive home. And he'd do that every day. And he would come home, he'd just be off his face and an absolute nightmare. And we had to walk on eggshells. And every night, I didn't know, would it end up with them getting drunk, because my mum was also drinking at that time, and would there end up just being a massive Barney? What would
yeah.
happen then? It's
I was
terrifying.
born into it, so I didn't know any
Mm,
different
yeah.
until I started visiting friends. And like when I got to that age where I was allowed to have a sleepover, and I wasn't allowed to do that very often, I think I would have been probably about 12 or 13 when that
Yeah.
happened. And that was when I kind of went, oh,
People don't live like this.
yeah, most people
No.
don't have this.
Yeah.
It didn't really, I kind of thought everyone kind of lived like that. And then I started to realize they didn't.
Well, I
And
got to see
yeah,
other people living differently with my stepbrothers and sisters and things, and they had a different relationship with their mother and things. But well, my mum always loved me and she was always trying to be there for me, but she had so much of her own trauma that she couldn't, and she was also, in such a bad way with her mental health and always in these awful relationships that she just simply couldn't be there for me in the way
I
she
mean,
wanted to.
exactly. I know exactly that that's the same thing with both my parents.
Mm,
Why did they
mm.
behave that way? They both had their own trauma. They probably should never have had kids, that type of thing. They
Yeah,
probably
absolutely.
never
That's
should have
what they
gotten
did.
married. But they had their own stuff, and
And
that's
they
why
stuck
you
together
have
through it
that
as well.
happening. Yeah.
Yeah.
And did they used alcohol as a mechanism for self-medication.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
and and you didn't, as I said, you didn't speak about that stuff back then either. So they had no one that they could go and talk to either to go and talk
No.
about any
And there
mental
was
health
so much
issues.
shame. There was so much
Yeah,
shame. There was so much expectation. And that's
exactly.
another thing that can trigger
And as Catholics as
all of that
well,
stuff.
you don't
Oh,
get a
God.
divorce, you stay together.
Yeah, because that's right. You're not allowed to. I mean, that's just
Yeah,
horrific, isn't it?
it's
That's
yeah,
that's like growing
ridiculous.
up in a pressure cooker that is basically designed to give you anxiety.
Yeah, exactly right. And
I
so
mean, if you're in that space, you're just going to
you
get
can see
this.
why that stuff it plays out as an adult, and where you can get some of those insecurities from and things like
Yep.
that. And I know for me, a lot of us said that not good enough and the not feeling loved came from my childhood.
Yep.
And it came from a
Yep.
decision that I made as a child that I wasn't good enough. So because of that environment.
Mm.
So yeah, it's fascinating, and there's so many tools that you
It
can
is
actually use
fascinating.
today.
Yeah.
So many tools that you can use to assist yourself. So
Well, my
that's
message
why
would
I take
be,
the first step. Take the first
yeah,
step.
to our viewers, my message would absolutely be 100% that no matter how cripplingly bad you're suffering from anxiety, which is a horrendous, awful mental health issue, it's very, very insidious. There is a way that you can get help and you can get better from that and you can learn to manage it. I mean, there's fantastic, even, it's great. It's important to get, I think you don't always need medication, but sometimes it's good to just give you a little bit of a break, but you really have
Mhm.
to do the mental work for anxiety. That's
You
the
do.
thing
You
that
do.
will fix that up and help you manage it long term.
Yeah, absolutely. And I
Oh,
know for me, as I said,
excuse me.
the doing the meditation work, getting into personal growth stuff. I've had mentors on and off. I have gone to counselors on and off. I've done a variety of different things. It's I did whatever. So I did whatever I could to actually assist myself, and I think that's what it comes down to. It took a lot of for me. It took a lot of experimenting with different things to figure out which was the things that I wanted to work with, and then you may find that some tools work for you for a period of time, and then
Mm.
you kind of outgrow them and you need to find a different type of tool. So yeah, it's just always
As
being
different beliefs
flexible and
pop up,
treating it.
as you start hearing different beliefs and
Yeah.
different things, yeah.
Yeah, and today there's so much resources out there. There's so much research that's been done around it. I mean, there's a powerful a little tool that I came across as well, especially when I started going through the menopausal anxiety, that helps to calm the nervous system down. It's called Apollo Neuro, and there's a few of these
Oh,
out
yeah,
now.
you've shown me that. I'm so
Yeah,
keen to get that.
yeah. So the Apollo Neuro, and it was a device I came across. online. I think it was created by, I think it was Harvard, some Harvard scientist or something like that. I can't remember now.
Yeah.
But anyway, how it does is it's got a number of different vibrational frequencies and you put it on somewhere on the bone, whether it's up here or on your wrist or whatever, and you play the frequency that you want, and it just calms that particular nervous system. So they've got a sleep frequency. They've got a frequency for if you wake up feeling sluggish and you need to re-energize yourself. There's a frequency for if you're needing to go into a meeting and you're a bit nervous about going in there, or you've got a presentation to do, or you've just come out of exercise, and you need to recover your body after exercise. There's all these different frequencies, and it's actually really, really cool. And that really helped me with to give me that little extra bit of oomph that I needed when I was going through the menopausal anxiety stuff.
Yeah, actually, I'm definitely going to invest in one. I'm going to actually give that a go, because I'm really some days, most of the time I'm okay, but some days I'm copping it.
And it's just, and I know when I first got it, I was wearing it nearly all the time. Now I only use it when I go to sleep, and it gives me a really good night's sleep. But it's a really, really good product, and I highly recommend it. So
okay, I must have to. I'm going to give that a go, and then I'm going to give you feedback on how I went, because I'm quite fascinated. And the other thing I might get that for is for my husband Joe, who is neurodivergent. I think I possibly am too, but I haven't been tested. But he has. He struggles to go to sleep at night. Neurodivergent. It's really common in people who are autistic. Really struggles to just to drift off.
Interesting.
Very interesting. It's very, very common. I've got quite a lot of autistic friends, or friends with ADHD or AUHD, and they're the same. Often they really struggle to get to sleep. So
it's a really it's a fabulous product. Can't really recommend it more. So so on that, I think that kind of brings it to an end. We could talk on this subject forever and a day. It's pretty, and it's such a common ailment that a lot of people actually have. It's at different levels,
different levels. Absolutely. Everyone. So I mean, that's a big one. It's just anxiety. It's so common. It's so common as people become, they understand it. But look, it's not something that goes away on its own. If you want to have a chat with us about things, please do reach out, because lived experience is incredibly valuable to help people navigate these sorts of things.
And would love to hear from you if something has jumped out for you in this particular episode, or you've got a question. By all means, please throw it through into our community, or even join our community page on Facebook as well. And we'd love to start communicating with you more often, more frequently. Okay, enjoy.
See you guys.
We'd like to say a huge thank you to our incredible audience for your continued support. Our mission is to ignite your spark, empowering you to be a beacon of light for others. We'd love to hear from you. So if you've got any questions that you would like answered in future episodes, or just want to share some insights, connect with us on our Facebook community page. If you're looking for additional resources, go to our website. You'll find the link below. And remember, the absolute best way to help us grow is to share this episode with your friends and family, and to subscribe to the Art of Beautiful Thinking podcast. So until next time, think beautifully and live brilliantly.